Greetings and welcome back to the Ethereal Soul and our Somatic Wisdom. My name is Valencia Borzoni Scott, and I am the author of Chasing Shade, Living with Developmental Trauma, talking about the body on this channel. We talk about a lot of other things too, because how we are embodied as a result of our development has a lot to do with how we engage in relationships, how we show up in the world. In an earlier video, I was talking about Gaza and that my Instagram feed, if you're following me there, you already know this. If you're not following me there, you may not want to go there. My Instagram feed daily, almost daily, is filled with stories from folks on the ground in Gaza and people who have family in Gaza and journalists and medical professionals, and we now have the international court that is involved with what is happening in Gaza, and that has all happened before. I think my hope about what's different this time is that there will be accountability. There have been judgments by higher courts around what the IDF has done, what the US and the British government did in establishing the state of Israel in Palestine, and that was illegal and should not have been done. But there has been no accountability. Nothing has been done. They've been told, the Israeli government, I should say, let me clarify that. The Israeli government has been told that they were to, I believe they were told that they needed to leave Palestinian territory, but that never happened. And that has happened again now. So it has been deemed that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide, and that it's a genocide. So I don't know what's going to happen. You know, this has been happening for decades. This conflict in the Gaza Strip, this conflict between the IDF, the Israeli government, and Hamas. Hamas is a revolutionary organization that established itself in the face of oppression. I'm not going to say anything more than that because I don't need to. But my feed is filled with that information, and you know, now taking a little bit of a break. I have been on a break from my YouTube channel for a couple of months now. There was a transition with some work, a transition with my living situation. I moved a little closer to my storage unit in another part of the city, so that I could address some things that I have in there. I have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of belongings. And I like my belongings, you know, but I'd like them more if they were actually in an apartment. And right now they're not. And so I will talk more about that in another video. So, you know, I've been trying to do more self-care. I can't see you because I've been looking up close for days, and so my distance sight is totally screwed up today. So in these last couple of videos, I've been talking about boundaries. It doesn't have anything to do with Gaza, although that could be an example of boundaries for sure. Palestinian people on their own land, boundaries are violated by a higher authority, if you will, British government and the US government, who decide to get in bed with Israel and create a state and put them on Palestinian land, and then move the Palestinians that were on that land to a little tiny narrow strip called the Gaza Strip, which is basically an open air prison. They have no rights, they don't have passports, they're not allowed to travel. fine, we're going to thrive right here. We're going to bloom where we are planted. How many of my little spiritual people have that on some little thing in their house? And so they did that. They built an infrastructure, hospitals, schools, you name it. But a lot of that is limited by the fact that they live in this little narrow strip of land, bordered by a couple of other countries in addition to what is called Israel, the state of Israel. And so there are all these constrictions, right? Like ridiculous. These aren't boundaries. These are, this is a prison. These are fences, right? And, you know, boundaries are meant to be healthy. Boundaries are about speaking up for oneself and saying, I'm not okay with this. And I'm hoping that you can respect and honor that. And if you can't, I understand. And I'm going to take my little self over here and go do something different, because this relationship doesn't nourish me, feel safe. I don't trust it. I don't trust you. I don't trust the context of our relationship, whatever the circumstances are, right? Whatever the context is. You speak your truth. You hope there's a conversation around that. And if there isn't, then you just go do your other thing. The Palestinians in Gaza, that's not an option. That's not an option. They've been speaking their truth for decades. And we have by and large been ignoring that. And not only are we now ignoring that, we're actually supporting the war. We're funding the IDF to continue their terrorist acts on Gaza. They are actually terrorizing the Palestinians in Gaza. The Palestinian people, women, children, men, elderly, all the animals, all my PETA people, where are you? Every living being in the Gaza Strip right now is being terrorized, and your tax dollars are paying for that. It's all over social media, and there's validity in that. And if you do the footwork, if you actually sat down and did some footwork, you would see that that is true, and that people have known this for decades. But because we haven't utilized our social media platforms for more than like pictures of my dinner and my doggy and my latest vacation trip and the newest fashion or nail fad, nobody fucking knows about it. So I'm going to take a few moments here to talk about that. There's a big boundary violation, right? Same thing here in the United States. The United States. There were indigenous people living here, and colonists from the UK came here as indentured servants, and as part of their system, you know, the founding fathers, Columbus, that whole troop of colonizers came and wiped out the majority of the indigenous people that were living here, which is exactly what's happening in Palestine right now with the Palestinian people in Gaza. So, you know, the US and the UK, of course, you know, this country was founded on British principles. The sun never set on their empire. We're going to own everything. All the things you've heard in context of, you know, power, but not in the way that we are really examining that word now, power, and what that means to abuse your power. For them, the UK, and back then when we learned it in school, it's like, wow, that's so amazing. They were able to travel the world and see all these places and discover all these those lands had already been, there was nothing to discover, okay? There was nothing to discover. Yeah, you discover that there's lands and people there. Don't forget that last part, okay? Boundaries, no respect. Respect and boundaries. Okay, so my glasses, I think, are cleaner. I really couldn't see anything. Oh, hey, that's so much better. Okay. So if we wanted to use, I can use Hamas as an example for this. It's probably a terrible example, but because it's very extreme. But Hamas basically is setting a boundary for themselves and saying, I'm not going to accept this behavior. We are not, as a people, going to tolerate you using us, IDF, for target practice. You've taken away our rights. You've taken away our country, our land. And now you're going to wipe out the entirety of the Palestinian people. You know. So there's that. But for the purposes of this conversation, let me dial it back a little bit. So if you're particularly triggered right now or upset, and you may have even tuned out at this point, I don't particularly care. Hope you come back to it so that you can get your own, whatever you need to get out of this. Let's bring it back to the microcosm, right? People, not countries and governments. God, I love coconut water. So dry. I'm so dry right now. It's hot. It's very hot. Doggies always want to go outside. It's too hot, booze. So what does it mean for you when someone else sets a boundary for you? Sets a boundary for themselves with you and says, I don't like the way I'm being treated in this situation. And here's what I would like instead. How do you respond to that? How do you act with that? There's a couple of examples. I have somebody close to me that I love very much, and they are very clear about phone calls and text messages at work. That's a big no-no. They're very clear about certain topics they don't want to talk about. They're very clear about the way conversations unfold. So if they're just venting, they're very clear about that. If they want advice, they're very clear about that. And they're also very clear about the way they're not the way they're asking for advice, but the advice they're looking for. Do you have a personal experience with this? Is this through the lens of something you read? Is this through a spiritual context? They're very clear about that. I love this person so much because they make it so easy for me to understand them, for me to be able to respect their boundaries, and for me to still be able to participate in the relationship with love and compassion. There is something so magnificent about boundaries. You just tell me. That's all. Just tell me. I will do the thing because I love you. How about ghosting? That's a boundary. I'm just going to disappear and not fucking talk to you at all ever about whatever the thing is. Other boundaries are very emphatic. I had somebody like a year or two ago tell me basically just fuck off. And I was like, cool. Not a problem. Because that is fucking bullshit. I don't want anything to do with it. If that's how you want to do it, then I'm good respecting that. Like I said, You tell me how you want to be in this relationship. And if that's the directive, that you don't want to have a relationship, I'm totally fine with that. Some relationships I may fight a little harder for. There was a long time ago that I fought for every relationship. I will respect your boundary. It's okay. I'll just take whatever little crumb you're offering. Fuck that. If you got to work that hard and violate your own boundaries all the fucking time to be in that relationship, you're being manipulated, one. And two, it's not worth it. It's not worth the time and the energy. Because what that does is it gaslights you. It sets you on a path of being on high alert at all times, because you never know when you might set that person off. And then they're coming at you with both barrels. And then, it's all your fault. What a bunch of horse shit. That's not a boundary. It's not a healthy boundary. Maybe when I'm talking about boundaries, I should put the word healthy in front of there. But there are boundaries that are not healthy, and then there are healthy boundaries. So the two can coexist at the same time. I'm not going to say that there's only healthy boundaries. Because people ghosting you, that's a boundary. It's either a boundary for themselves because they don't want to be around your toxic bullshit, or they don't have the capacity to say, you know what, this is hard. This is too hard for me and I don't want to do it anymore. Maybe they're doing you a favor by ghosting. Maybe that's what needs to happen, right? I don't know. I had a relationship that I kept trying to set a boundary, and it was constantly being violated. Every little, the group message, the email, the tagging on social, whatever it was always some random thing. And it was like a 2x4 to the side of my head. It was so painful. Every time I was like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. I'm focused on me. I'm focused on whatever was happening in my life at that time. I'm focusing on my things and what I need to do. And then bam. And it was so hard because there was a part of me that really wanted to keep that relationship in place. And what I needed to do was ask myself, why? What am I really getting out of that relationship? What am I thinking? What am I thinking is going to be beneficial or nourishing about this relationship as it is? And that was the key, is that I wasn't thinking about the relationship in the present moment. I was thinking about its potential, and potential can piss off. Let me just tell you right now, don't ever get into a relationship, an intimate relationship, friend or otherwise, for its potential. Maybe a business relationship. There's a possibility we could work together in the future. Fine. We all know what that looks like. You did the thing. Oh my God, I have a project. You send them a message. You call them and reach out. Hey, what are you doing right now? What are you working on? So I have this project and I thought about you. Would you be willing to collaborate with me on this? Totally would love to. What are we talking about? I'm open right now. I've got something coming in a couple of weeks. What are we looking at? That kind of potential, very different. But if a person comes to you as they are, that's who they are. That's what they're offering. There is nothing else. And to have an expectation of that person and to anticipate that there will be something more, that they will change their lifestyle or change their goal or their agenda or who they are based on your potential, well, they would do that for me, wouldn't they? That is so, it's such a nightmare. It's such a nightmare. It's so convoluted. It's very codependent. It's not even forward thinking. It's fantasy thinking. And there's no value in that, right? It's not honest. It's not authentic. It's not present moment. And I finally, in this friendship that I was just kind of allowing to float out there, I finally just set a boundary and was like, you know what? There is nothing in this friendship for me. Nothing. I'm not getting anything out of this. And I can't give you anything because you don't want what I have as a friend. So I'm just going to say fuck off now. It's been a long time. And I did that. And you know what? Peace. It rains from the heavens. Peace. It's been a long time since I did that. What a grace. What an absolute grace for my mental health, my physical well-being, my own heart, cherishing my inner child, loving myself, setting that boundary and saying, don't contact me anymore, ever, in any way, shape, or form. Don't do it. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. I don't want to hear your apologies now. It's way too late. You're focused on that moment, so you just keep choking on that because you fucked up. And I know it, and you know it. And your attempt to maintain this friendship in some way is not healthy for me, for sure. So we have to really look at that. You know, we can set boundaries. But if someone sets a boundary with us and says, this is what I'm offering, can we accept that? Can we accept that? Do we take it all personally and get all fucking butthurt and, you know, me, you know, I'm going to go over here with my toys and play by myself or, you know, whatever. What is that? We get to look at ourselves. Like I said, some relationships might be worth fighting for. That's very subjective. I'm not going to say which relationship. I'm not going to say why, because it's all very subjective. That is a deeply personal decision, right? I'm going to have a boundary and I'm going to fight for this relationship. How about that? Mm-hmm. Because you can't have both. You can do both. You can have a boundary and fight for the relationship at the same time. And guess what that requires? That requires you showing up different. If you want to lead the person back into the relationship, if that's what you want, then you have to show up different. Leaders don't steamroll. Alphas don't steamroll. They lead. There's a difference, right? People who run around calling themselves alphas, alphas don't do that. Alpha type personalities don't run around obviously pissing in the corner territorially and calling themselves alphas. They just are. That's just how it works. Not all alphas want to lead. Some alphas are content to just let somebody else do it. That's leadership. That's setting the ego aside and saying, you know what, in this context, I don't need to lead. Somebody else can do it because somebody else wants to, because maybe that person needs to grow through their leadership opportunity. So I can step back and let them do the leading thing. Go for it. Do it. You're going to love it. It's amazing. I've done the group thing. I've taught classes. I've facilitated groups. I've had a lot of privilege. Those are privileges to show up and work with others, to lead people. It's a privilege. So to run around arrogantly, you're abusing that. You know, that's an unhealthy way, especially if you're telling people, hey man, it's my way or the highway. Do the thing. That's not a boundary. That's not a boundary. It's not a healthy boundary. That's for sure. That's a survival mechanism. That's an attempt to control. That's an unhealed wound running life. We need to pay attention to the wording and the languaging and how we get caught up in our narratives. My narrative for many years was, it's almost over. I can get through this and then we're done. You know, I got this, I can handle it, just fucking do the thing. I was always pushing myself. Pushing. And I hurt myself a lot in relationships, in financial struggles, in work relationship, toxic relationships, family, toxic family relationship, all the things, right? Those are not healthy boundaries. Me telling myself to just do it, get it over with, that is not a healthy boundary. That is not showing up for self. It's dangerous, it's unhealthy for the physical health, for the mental health, for spiritual well-being, for all of the things that we might use as a measuring stick. That is not a healthy mental narrative to have. My way or the highway, do as I say, just keep doing the thing and get it over with. It'll all be over soon. All of that, all of those mental narratives, they're toxic. They're toxic and unhealthy. It took me a long time to discover and see and deconstruct my own mental narrative. And, there are some drawbacks to the deconstructing of that because it's not completely integrated into a new way of functioning yet. That's coming. It's just taking time. And at 59 years old, it's like, wow, that's a long road. It's a long, long fucking journey, So when others set a boundary, when somebody sets a boundary with us, do we respect that? Can we say, you know what, I hear you. I hear that that's important to you. And I hear what you're telling me and there's value in that for me. Can we see the value for us as a person when somebody else sets a boundary with us? Can we see that? Or do we get all fucking wound up, triggered, activated by some shit? Oh, how dare you not love me? How dare you not accept all of me after all I've done for you? Have you heard that one? That's a good one. After everything I've done for you. The Al-Anon salute. We used to call that the Al-Anon salute. There are better ways to do that. We're going to talk about that.